Hi everyone, it's Pete here and welcome to the fourth and final part of my build guide to this, which is the Tamiya Volvo Hauler 6x6 kit. In part 3 I got as far as step 34, which meant that I've got the truck bed attached to the chassis. In step 35 we're attaching these C5 body posts to these H4 and H5 parts. We're using the MC4 machine screw and MC21 nut. Now step 36, I'm deviating from the instructions a little bit. They want you to put these little grub screws into the holes in the chassis, but I'm not going to be doing that because I'm planning to use these side bars, which do come in the kit but aren't part of the standard build. Now, I don't know why Tamiya don't suggest using these bars because they do fit on with a light bit of trimming. One thing I need to do is just move the ball connector I put on the side of the chassis earlier and position it onto the side of the bar. So we're going to attach this 8/6 plate, which is what the radio gear goes on, then we're going to put on the body mounts that we made earlier. Now with the standard build you're using the 18mm and 10mm self-tapping screws to attach these body mounts. Because I'm using the sidebar here, I sort of found some longer screws and I needed a few extra screws. I can't remember exactly what sizes, but I just sort of used trial and error to find ones that fitted. Now this does actually give a bit of extra support to the body mount, so there is a practical purpose for it, and also it's very useful for running the cables, which we'll see later. The C8 front body post attached with the 18mm self-tapping screws. Like I was saying, these sidebars are useful for running the cables, like this one from the rear steer servo. For the sidebar on the other side, I just had to drill an extra hole for this ball connector, and also trimmed a little bit out of it to make it easy to run the motor wires. So again, I just found some suitable screws to attach this. Step 37, we're attaching the radio gear, and where you position it sort of depends on the sizes of the components that you're using. I do actually rearrange this later to make it a bit easier to get to the switch. Next we need to put the aerial tube into this B7 part, but you don't need an aerial tube this long unless you're using radio gear from yesteryear. This attaches with a 10mm self-tapper and a washer. Now I always find it really helpful to have a cat sitting on the instructions. Step 38 is just attaching the motor cables, and also there's a battery extension cable. Now you should find that most batteries fit around the other way with the wires at the cab end, so you don't need that extension. Step 39 is just tidying up the cables with some cable ties, which I get onto a bit later. Step 40, we're building up these cylinders which hold up the tipper when it's open. The instructions suggest painting these in German grey, but I'm not going to paint them because I think it might flake off in use. So it's just a case of putting the adjuster on the end of the 89mm threaded shaft. Then the other end there's a nut to go on. Now I'm making these a bit longer than it shows because the ball connectors on the side of the chassis are in a slightly different place because of that mod I did with the sidebars. So there's an O-ring and a lock nut, and the O-ring gets squeezed slightly, which should provide a bit of friction inside the cylinder. You put a little bit of grease on just to make sure it doesn't get completely stuck. Then the two halves of the cylinder go together with these little 2x6mm self-tapping screws. So check it slides okay and just make another one the same. These just pop onto the ball connectors on the side of the chassis and the tipper. So just a quick test that they actually work. Step 41 is attaching the wheels. Now it doesn't say to do this, but I always like to glue the tyres on. If you don't do this, you can get dirt stuck in between the tyre and the wheel, and they sometimes can come off, so I think it's always best to do this. So back to the instructions, you need to put in your plastic bushing or metal bearing, then you put in the little MC16 shaft, then you need to put on the E10 plastic hex, then put your wheel on, making sure the treads are going in the right direction. It's the MC20 lock nut to attach it. Do the same for all 6 wheels, and that's step 41 done. Step 42, we're putting together the front bumper and attaching it to the chassis. So we've got parts H12 and H3 that need screwing together with the MC8 screws, which are 3x8.1mm. Then the bumper attaches to the chassis with 2 of these MC11 screws, which are 3x21mm. You need to put the MC1 bumper springs on the bumper mount first of all, then you put the bumper on and screw the screws through the springs. In step 43 they're just showing you how to put the battery in, and they're threading the antenna wire, which I've already done. What I do need to do is install this servo Y splitter so I can run both servos from the same port of the receiver. so I've just tidied up the wires as best as I can with some cable ties. Now this is a good opportunity to test everything. That seems to work okay. So the back wheels aren't quite straight compared with the front wheels here, so I'll need to adjust the rods a little bit. You can't adjust the servos separately because I'm using the same port for both servos. Step 44 is showing you where the stickers go on the pre-painted body. One thing I've done in addition is to put Gorilla Tape around the bits of the body that I think might crack, like the body post holes. Again, it's always useful to have a cat sitting on the instructions and poking around with everything. These aren't pre-cut, so you need to cut them all out individually and stick them on where it says. I tend to cut off a little bit of the backing so I can get the sticker in position before I take off the rest of the backing and stick it down fully. So that's all the stickers, looks pretty good. The stickers on the edges of the mud guards are pretty tricky because they sort of go around a curve, and I used a hairdryer. They're not quite flat, but they're not too bad. For most of the windows I just cut out the frames so they were more transparent, but for this window on the back here the Lexan had cracked down the corner, so I've left the clear part of the sticker on there for a bit of extra strength, and also a little bit of Gorilla Tape to try and strengthen up that bit. Step 45 is putting the cab onto the truck, so it just slides down over the body post and is held on with body clips. Now it's all together, it's a good chance to test the suspension, see if it feels right. It does seem very nice, so I'll leave it like this. One thing I was concerned about is the bumper getting bent down and broken off in a bad landing. So what I've done is to make some little Lexan tabs with Velcro on, and then I've put the other side of the Velcro inside the cab, and so I can sort of stick the whole lot together. So that seems to work pretty well, and you can still get the cab off if you need to. One thing I did just change was the position of the on-off switch to make it a bit easier to get to with the body shell on. So I reckon it looks fantastic, and it's definitely time for a test drive. Now these things are really good fun to drive, especially with the four-wheel steering, and even more so with the brushless set. So everything was going really well at this location, so I thought I'd take it somewhere else just to see how it was with quite a steep hill. Now these tyres are great for bashing around, but not quite grippy enough for this sort of thing. I'll just try that again, what could possibly go wrong? Oh yeah, that went wrong. So back to the workshop for a fix. Now these pivots are hard plastic and seem like a bit of a weak point. So the plan is to use these body posts that are included in the kit, because these are what you'd use if you had the Konghead kit. All I did was drill some holes in the bed here and use some body clips to hold it on. So you can still get the battery in okay, but the bed doesn't stay up like it used to with the pivots. So apart from that, nothing else has gone wrong, and I have been using this one an awful lot. So that's about it for this one. What I'm going to do is put up a separate video with some more of this run footage. A very big thank you goes out to the RCL who got me this kit, and to everyone else, thanks ever so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.